MPO staff, has this meeting been posted?
Yes.
Yes, it has. Are there councils that should be called into session? The Waco City Council will be called into session at 2 o'clock. Any other councils that need to be called into session? I'm going to do a roll call here before we start the meeting. Starting at the top here, Josh Bordery, Vice Chair, is here. Councilmember Andre Bearfield is here. Jacob Bell, Citizen Rep. Here. Keith Vaughn, City Manager, Lacey Lakeview. Deidre Emerson, Deputy City Manager, City of Waco, right there. Keith Evans, City Manager, City of McGregor. Here. Judge Felton.
I'm in the state.
Commissioner Pat, you're covering for Scott. Ross Harris, Plan Commission, right over there. Jim Jaska, Ross Mayor. He's not here. Commissioner Jones, Will Jones is here. City Manager Craig Lemon. City Robinson right there. Mayor Dylan Meek, City of Waco is here. City Manager Sean Oubre over there. Councilmember Alice Rodriguez is not here. District Engineer Stan Switek is here. City Manager Yost Zachary. Let's see Yost here. And City Manager of Hewitt, Bo Thomas. Okay, so I think that's it. We will move on to the first item, which is the public hearing. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO policy board on the agenda item. Please complete a speaker's registration card with the MPO staff. Speakers will be allotted one presentation at the beginning of the agenda for each agenda item the speaker wishes to address. Please note that each action item will have a separate public hearing later in the agenda. Speakers have the option of addressing the board at either time. You'll only be allowed one opportunity to address the board per agenda item. For items not on today's agenda, there's a separate hearing of visitors at the end of the meeting. MPO staff, do we have any registered speakers? No, we do not. There are no registered speakers. We'll move to agenda item number 3 and consider approval of the minutes of the November 17th, 2022 MPO policy board meeting. Copy of those minutes is provided in the meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes as submitted? Any comments? There are no comments. The minutes are approved as presented. The first item today on your agenda is item number 4, is a presentation discussion regarding Waco Transit System Inc. fixed route realignment study from the Alliance Transportation Group, ATG. I think we have Renee here to speak.
Hey, everybody. My name is Renee Pastorek with Alliance Transportation Group. So I'm here to just briefly update you all on the finalization of the Reimagine Waco Transit project, which is a redesign of the transit system in Waco for the first time in 20 years to really see how we can redesign the system to meet the current market demands as well as enhance service for citizens throughout the city. Just a quick thanks to all of our partners, of course, Waco Transit System, the Waco MPO, the City of Waco, as well as our sub-consultants, AECOM and VIA, who worked with us on this project. So the overall goals of the Reimagine Waco Transit project, again, is to redesign the transit system for the first time in 20 years, really using an equity-driven approach to ensure that all citizens throughout the city are able to access their destinations using transit if needed. And early on through public input, some key goals were identified, and that was to improve connectivity, minimize travel time, and provide freedom through transit for citizens throughout the city. So how did we get to where we are today? So in 2013, there was an initial study with a recommendation to redesign the system for improved economic development. In 2017, the study was furthered with a bus rapid transit study to determine feasibility for bus rapid transit as a component of that system redesign. And then this study was kicked off in 2021 to choose a pathway for improved transit redesign for the system, as well as long-term bus rapid transit implementation. And then the item on the bottom of the screen, this is just showing our dual approach using community input through community engagement, stakeholder engagement, as well as combined with data analysis using the best available data, state of the practice in the transit industry to come up with a system that really best meets the citizens' needs, again, based on input and data analysis. So just briefly, I'll go through the existing service as it stands today, just to kind of set a baseline of the redesign. So there's 10 fixed routes already in the system, with additional service available with Baylor University Shuttle, as well as demand response service throughout the city. Many of the routes run in only run in one direction. There's no fixed stops. This is a flag stop system. Really, citizens are able to board the bus anywhere on the route. The general span is between 5 a.m. and 7 p.m. Weekdays, Saturday service varies by route. The general frequency varies, but is generally 60 minutes for most routes in the system. This is just more detail showing that the various routes, some of them do have a little earlier start or later start, but generally kind of all meeting the same service standards as it stands today. So one key data set that we looked at, of course, is existing ridership. This just shows the various routes and their levels of productivity in the system. Several routes are very high performing. Of course, this shows us that these routes are really heavily used by the citizens, are really meeting their need, as well as some underperforming routes that really could be altered or realigned to better serve the existing routes as they are today. Another piece of data that we looked at also is boarding by hour. So this just shows us that really there's no peaks in the service throughout the system. Citizens are boarding the bus at all times of the day, which is really showing that citizens really need the service throughout the day, throughout the week as well. Again, this is just a snapshot of the current system as it stands today. You can really see that the fixed route extends throughout the entirety of the city, regardless of maybe levels of efficiency for service. We are seeing that ridership is increasing since COVID across the nation. Many agencies did see a drastic decrease in service. So we're seeing that increase here as well as across the nation. So in addition to looking at the existing service, one key part of the study is a transit market analysis, which combines several key factors into a transit market score, just to use a technical analysis to identify the best areas for service. So this looks at key destinations, so hospitals, schools, places of employment, transit propensity, so places where employment or population is forecasted to grow. Multimodal connectivity, so looking at where routes can connect to bike routes and sidewalks. Social vulnerability, so where are the areas of the city where those most vulnerable and dependent on transit are, so we can meet their needs and serve them. As well as general route design, so just looking at which roads can really provide the best service for turns and traffic measures as well. So using all that data and citizen input, we initially came up with 3 scenarios. 2 of those involve initial implementation of bus rapid transit. So there was a scenario looking at full implementation of bus rapid transit with a realignment, a middle scenario, which is kind of a hybrid, kind of bare bones bus rapid transit with a realignment, and then a blank slate, which is really realigning the transit system with fixed route and micro transit to meet those changing needs of the city in a way that reflects both citizen input and that technical analysis. Following presentations to the MPO stakeholders as well as the city council did choose to select scenario 2 as the preferred alternative for the redesign as a way to incrementally build out the system, grow ridership, and then long-term be able to implement that bus rapid transit once seeing that increase in ridership. So about scenario 2, again, this is a blank slate. Future bus rapid transit implementation is still possible. It would involve 2 micro transit zones at either ends of the city to provide an on-demand service similar to Uber for the price of general transit fare in those areas that are maybe harder to reach with fixed route service. The key improvements that we're seeing with this is expanded service, improved frequency, and increased connectivity. And then we use that transit market score to determine which routes could have higher frequency. So 2 routes along in the system would have 30-minute frequency. All other routes would have 1 hour frequency. Just a quick bit about microtransit. Again, this is a service similar to Uber, very cutting edge state of the practice in the transit industry. So this would be used to really provide better connectivity in those lower density areas that may not be suitable for fixed route transit. And I have two slides here that just show the increase in connectivity that are available with microtransit. If you can see quickly, this just shows that in those two microtransit zones, based on the FTA stops model, that the ability to reach key destinations in both areas at different levels, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, really is a significant increase. So the improvement in service is very significant there. Just as a comparison, here's two maps showing the existing versus scenario two. You can see scenario two is a much more condensed, refined system with those microtransit zones, filling in the gap where, again, a fixed route service is not necessarily feasible. The existing service has 10 routes where there would be 12 in scenario two. We'd see an increase of 6 buses in service to meet those higher frequency routes, as well as the increased number of routes. Then, of course, this would be a change in increase in microtransit zones, which currently isn't available in the city of Waco. We put together just a couple of performance metrics just to show visually the improvements that we're seeing in our modeling efforts across the redesigned system. And we're really seeing that this system would provide increase in frequency and connectivity and general efficiency overall for citizens throughout the area. Additionally, with that model, we're able to see that under the scenario two redesign, there would actually be a 31% increase in ridership, as opposed to 12% increased ridership by 2040. Now, this is a huge number for a transit system. That's something that, again, basing the redesigned system on the market analysis really has an impact on growing that ridership. We also see a growing ridership in transit dependence at 55%, so that's very significant as well for the redesign. The cost of this service, or the investment needed, it would increase the operating cost for the city by about $500,000 a year at the local level. The rest would be funded with federal sources. Very limited capital costs would be needed for this level of implementation, just for those fixed stops, as well as any additional shelters or anything that would be needed. We also included, as part of the plan, initial cost estimates for electrification. So this is just showing a startup cost of $2.3 million for 2 buses, electric buses, as well as charging equipment as a way to kickstart those efforts, and then purchase additional buses year after year once the current fleet has met their useful life. So just a quick rundown of existing versus scenario two. This would see improved efficiency for Waco Transit with route interlining, so just better routes that are able to accommodate single drivers on multiple routes. This still positions Waco to implement bus rapid transit. This introduces new and innovative technology to better meet public needs. We're keeping a minimum 1-hour route frequency with 30-minute frequency on 2 routes. That's an improvement. As well as allowing more users to access transit just due to frequency and the variety of options. So quick next steps, there's a more detailed implementation plan within the plan, but the next steps would involve capital purchases for microtransit, for vehicles and software, implementing scenario 2 redesign overall, and then down the line seeking capital funds for bus rapid transit implementation. That'll conclude my presentation. Yes, sir.
I have a question. On the slide, I don't know what it is, but it says where it talks about from Harlem Street and Turner Street. That's at 50 or 552% increase in job accessibility. Do you have the raw numbers of that?
I believe we should.
I'd just be really curious. It's really exciting. That's a number that jumps out at me in terms of it getting people connected to jobs. So I'd be curious to see what those raw numbers are.
Yeah, certainly. Can look that for.
Any other questions for Renee?
Yes, ma'am.
Meg Wallace from Mobilize Waco. Will this be extending out into the rural areas, and how would it coordinate with rural transit?
This is just a redesign of the fixed route urban system. There's no changes planned for the rural system under this scenario. So those connections would still be made with the transit center and other areas.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, that is, we'll close that. Thank you, Renee, for that presentation. We'll move to the next item 5. This is an action item. Consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2023-1, adoption of regional identity recommendations 3 and 4 from the Waco MPO strategic planning work group. Dr. Kumar.
So with very short background, we have discussed this over the last 6 months as part of the strategic planning work group presentations. And at the October meeting, the policy board adopted the recommendations of the strategic planning work group in its entirety. And in terms of sequencing of all the recommendations, the first recommendation related to regional identity had to do with the redesignation of the MPO itself. And the way it works is that currently City of Waco is the designated MPO, and one of the recommendations was to make the to recommend and request TxDOT to work on behalf of the governor and make the policy board the designated MPO. And directly linked with that recommendation is, so this is the one that is on your screen right now, in which currently the planning agreement that is among the MPO policy board, City of Waco, and the TxDOT, or acting on behalf of the governor, says that this agreement is made by and between the state of Texas. And you notice that in the upper portion, it says the City of Waco, which serves as the fiscal agent for the MPO and which has been designated by the governor of the state of Texas as the MPO of the Waco urbanized area. That designation changes to, in the proposed language, to the policy board. Related to that is the next one, in which the responsibilities of the 3 parties to the planning agreement, City of Waco, Policy Board, and TxDOT, responsibilities are listed for each of the 3 parties. Currently, the sole responsibility to hire, supervise, evaluate, and terminate the MPO Transportation Planning Director is listed as the responsibility of the designated MPO, which is City of Waco. And under this proposed recommendation, that will move to the Policy Board. And what it does is that it's entirely based on this idea that our original agreement was from 1974 and it had not been revisited. And what this also does is that it takes the strategic planning recommendations that we had made, work group's recommendations, and at the same time, it brings the Waco MPO in line with all other Texas MPOs. What it also does is that it clearly delineates the separation of powers among the 3 entities, TxDOT, MPO Policy Board, and the City of Waco. And in the process, it also improves our efficiency significantly. One of the point of very important note is that in order to maintain continuity, and it is really important to us because in many ways we already function that way, but this formalizes the process quite in that manner. And so what it does is that so City of Waco will remain the fiscal agent. So none of the logistics or everything we do, it will not change. All it does is those 2 very important changes in which MPO gets designated to be the MPO, to be the MPO, the policy board. And the second, the responsibility of hiring, firing, and supervision of the MPO director falls on the policy board. One of the things that I do want to do is, if I can acknowledge the 5 people who work on the strategic planning work group, they've spent numerous hours trying to refine, discuss, and so 2 of the members from the policy board who are here, Chairman Councilman Jim Holmes and Bose Thomas, and we also have Amy Bernali from City of Waco, and I don't think Zane is here, but Zane Dunham worked quite a bit, and Lorraine Dupuy. 5 of them spent numerous hours presenting this, thinking through this. And we had a lot of help and discussion from Bill Frowley, who a lot of you have met him several times. And if there are more questions related to the process, if there is the Texas expert on MPO, that's Bill Frowley. So he can answer all of those questions. And our MPO representatives who have been very instrumental in the process. So a lot of you have met Bridgeta Gonzalez and Todd Gibson, our MPO coordinator, both of them right here.
Any questions? This is kind of a cleanup item that we've been looking at now for, I guess, a year. We brought it up many times. We're finally acting on today. And the clarity to me, and Deidre, Deputy City Manager Emerson, help me on this one. We're, from the city of Waco's perspective, we will still act as the fiscal agent, the accounting funds manager, if you will. But we are appropriately not going to be the designated MPO, and we will not have the power to hire, fire the executive director.
That's true.
Switch over to policy.
That's true, but I would say that by practice, we have, in hiring an MPO director, we have utilized the MPO board as part of that hiring process. So by practice, we've been doing this.
So, this is to clean up of what practically can happen. So, any other questions on that? If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-1. Oh, sorry. Are there any registered speakers to speak on this item? No. Entertain a motion to approve the adoption of regional identity recommendations 3 and 4 from the MPO strategic planning work group. Do I hear a motion? I hear a motion from Councilmember Bearfield, second. A second from Keith Bond. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That motion passes. On to item number 6, consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2023-2, creation of a local fund to meet local match requirements for grant recipients and related needs. Dr.
So we have been discussing how important the current infrastructure bill is and how we need to position ourselves in a manner to maximize the not only resources, but this is once in a lifetime opportunity for which we should be prepared to maximize not only all kinds of planning, but also several amounts of implementation funds. And part of that effort has been that so far we have written, the MPO has written 2 grant applications, and later on in today's meeting, we'll also discuss another one that we plan to write and submit by the end of February. And so what typically happens in all of them, there is typically, in most cases, there's about 20% local match. There is a requirement for most of these. And so, and since, and we do not get any transportation development credit, and therefore we always have difficulty coming up with that 20% local match. So the idea was that we needed to create a local fund so that whenever these opportunities arise, we can maximize our effort to do that. And that's how we came up with the original idea. We discussed the distribution, how would we do this, and it will be largely financed by the member governments. However, I should point out that once we have this local fund, it also allows me and the MPO staff to do other forms of fundraising with foundations and some of the other private sources as well. The way we are looking at it is that it will be primarily used to fund local match for external grants, and with small bit of additional leeway for using up to $10,000 for items such as public outreach, certificate maintenance, and so on. Typically items which we cannot use the PL dollars to finance with. And so another very important item that I want to mention is that that's what came out in a lot of discussions, that most of the budget items should be approved by 2/3 votes of the members present. This is the recommended scenario for the next one. And this is what we have been discussing, that all the cities above 5,000 will be, this is what came out of the TAC recommendation, population-based contribution of $5,000 each, with the city of Waco at 50,000 and McLennan County at 20,000. And McLennan County also covers the 3 smaller, 3 members on the policy board who represent the smaller cities in the rural parts of the county. And so that adds up to about $100,000. Next one. So the items that I wanted to mention is that it needs to be the population-based contribution that we can revise every 10 years when the new decennial numbers come out. And the detailed budget, as we were discussing when is the good time to present it to the policy board, February appeared to be the best time, because by that point in time, a lot of city budgets are already done and they can be accounted for. And we can plan better if we have the February meeting. Although there is nothing magical about it other than logistical inconvenience about the February date. We also think that it will, at any point in time, any policy board member wanted to have a detailed accounting of where the money is, we'll make sure that it is available. The contributions from the governments should be made to on April 15th. April 15th is especially important for this year because we're expecting to hear from the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan grant by the end of February and for the Reconnecting Communities grant by March. That would be the time when we would start contemplating, how do we come up with a local fund match. We already mentioned the 2/3 votes of the present members with these two exceptions. One is that whenever there is a federal grant that policy board has already approved us to move forward with, the MPO director is authorized to use up to $100,000 as a local match for those grants. And then the additional item of $10,000 per year max and $250 per event for work group related expenses, public outreach training, and any form of certificate maintenance. So that's the detail we have, and I'm happy to answer more questions or any further detail, or if we have to modify some of these dates or changes, we can do that.
In order to vote this through, we don't have to have the checks with us here today. Right?
That is correct.
Yes.
Cash is fine.
Okay, we'll take that.
So any other questions for Dr. Kumar? I had one question. The slide on the, what did we finally end up with? Okay, what's in the, okay, so it's scenario 1 in the material.
That's what the TAC recommended.
Okay. All right, we've talked about this one, I think, over the last 3 or 4, 5 meetings, probably. It seems to be an equitable way to figure out how to put up the matching funds without a lot of hassle. And as Dr. Kumar said, all these votes will require 2/3, but we'll all get a look at what we're going to use these matching funds for. So as we go forward. So if there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion to approve the creation of a local fund to meet local match requirements for grant recipients and related. Do I hear a motion? Motion by Councilmember Boardroom. Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That motion passes. We move on to item 7, consideration and action regarding the establishment of a schedule for a 2023 carbon reduction program call for. Dr. Cooper.
So on October 20th, the policy board approved resolution 2214, which was adoption of the carbon reduction program. And just as a background, we for the current fiscal year, we have $594,084, and that's roughly the amount that will be available each year for the next 5 years. And at that resolution, we also discussed all the format in which we will do the call for proposal, the evaluation criteria, and how TAC will process the application once they receive it. So next step really today, what we're asking you to do is to give us directive action on setting dates and the length for the call for proposals. And we would also like you to decide on a schedule for public input and evaluation. And one of the small items that we had not discussed previously that came up at the last TAC meeting is that there is an associated amendment needed in our public participation plan. And so we also want your directive action today to tell us to start that process of amendment as well. There's a 45-day public comment period associated with any change we make with public participation plan. And there is, for several other ones, it's a 10-day period. So that is associated with this as well. The schedule that we have in front of us that TAC recommended is that on Wednesday, March 1, could be the opening date for the carbon reduction program. We close it after 2 months on May 1, 2023, and proposals must be submitted by the sponsoring entities, in this case, the municipalities. And the proposals our proposal overview will occur on May 4th, which is the Technical Advisory Committee meeting, in which all the sponsors of the project will have 3 minutes to give a brief on what the project is. And that will also be the time to invite the public to have their comments taken during that meeting. Proposal evaluation period is going to be May 4th through May 19th. And what we would like to do is that at June 1, at the TAC meeting, The TAC determines what the ranks of the proposals are and the ones that they are willing to forward to the MPO for their approval during the June meeting. And so that's the schedule that we have, that TAC is recommending. And so before we get to discussion, and the most important part really is this schedule. And so if there is any question or suggestion, we are open.
Dr. Norman, if there was perhaps public comment that was to be sent in as opposed to publicly, I mean, in person, would they send that, should we recommend they send that information to you or to, like, through the city secretary's office, how our comments are?
So we are actually working on through our website. So so Daniela is working with Corey, City of Waco, so that on the website we are going to have the intake form all set up before the opening of the proposal.
Any other questions on the call for proposal? Anything else on that?
No.
Okay, so in this proposal, we're asking for directive action here for the members of the policy board to clearly direct staff to move forward. So I'm going to ask for those in favor of this directive action at this point, say aye. Aye. Those not wanting to give this directive action, say no. So we got it as a record. Okay. Thank you. Item 8, another review and discussion and action regarding regional transportation performance requirements for calendar year 2020.
Just a little bit of background to the next one. So our planning process that is mandated by the Federal Higher Administration largely follows this chart here. And in the performance management, there is a system operations that we typically evaluate and monitor. What you're going to hear from us today are 3 sets of targets, 2 related to public transit and 1 related to safety. Related to public transit, there are transportation asset management targets as well as transit safety targets. And those 2 targets are, Serena is going to present on those 2 targets related to Waco Transit, our public transit system. And then we will also talk about the safety related to the overall roadway fatality as well as serious injuries. So
All right, so basically, when we're talking about the public transportation asset condition, our performance target, this is a process of setting these targets and then assessing the progress. And it allows Waco Transit System to have a snapshot of the health of our vehicles in our fleet as an annual basis. And then throughout the life cycle of the vehicle, we're able to decide based on the allocated funding, what's the next vehicles that we need to purchase in our fleet for replacement. We get a certain amount of money through our 5339 funding that is allocated for fleet replacement. And so this type of target setting allows us to have a systematic approach to what needs to be replaced based off of the life cycle of the vehicle. So the goals. The goal is there. The goal is basically to be associated with performance. And again, we use it to track the progress. Setting and achieving performance targets is a local decision. Waco Transit System's targets are set on realistic expectations, again, based off our funding. The TAM final rule does not lay out penalties for missing a target, nor are rewards issued if we attain the targets. It basically shows that, again, the city is looking at the process with regards to replacement so that we can extend and make sure that we meet the safety measures to continue to provide safe transportation to the community. Okay, so when you're looking at our current condition of our targets, if you look at that far corner, it'll show the current status of our vehicles based off of November of 2022. We enter our data into the National Transit Database every January. And then, and so from there, we pull that statistical data and make the decisions that we could submit for what we need to replace. And again, all that's contingent on our funding. Currently, we would need to meet our 2023 target or exceed their useful benchmark of their life of the vehicle. We would need to replace 10 of our urban buses. We need to replace 6 of our urban cutaways. We need to replace 1 urban van, and the supply chain delays and disruptions caused us some delays in some of the vehicles that we had requested in 21. And however, in December of 22, we were able to get those vehicles on site. And so that will help us exceed our useful life benchmark that's set by FTA. And again, we go through this exercise just to make sure the local decision makers can act in plenty of time to make the decisions necessary for the improvements. We're also looking at our low-no study to kind of evaluate what's the best path forward with regards to electrification and diesel vehicles. So we want to make sure when the next round of funding comes, we're able to factor that into what's the best path forward for our system. All right, and so when we talk about our public transit agency safety targets, again, it's just a better access. It's just better to assess and maintain safety risks within our transit network. We don't move freight, we move people. So safety is always a priority for us. These performance targets and how our vehicles are rated is based off of a standard that's set by FTA. And so every incident and accident that occurs with our vehicles is not always tracked under our public transit safety targets. If we had occurred, that's not something that's reportable under the National Transit Database. However, if our vehicle is towed away, if there's an incident where EMS is called out, if there's property damage that's more than $25,000, then those are things that are reported. And that's where the statistics come from, the historical information over the past 5 years. And so we submitted our information to council on December the 6th, which would have been the historical data that we submitted to the National Transit Database. And we are performing well based off of our system. And again, incidents occur, accidents occur, but for us, we want to have a realistic expectation of what is preventable and what's not preventable. And so we have full confidence in our staff that we will continue to reinforce our safety messages. We have safety meetings every month. We go out, we do assessments on our routes so that we can make sure that, again, we're providing the highest level of service to the community that depends on us. And that's all for Waco.
Thank you. If I may just add that by supporting the Waco Transit's TAM and PTASK targets, what we agree to do is to define and prioritize some of the projects that will help them achieve those targets. The next set of targets that we are discussing today is also required by the FAST Act. And the expectation is to provide a safe roadway network. Most of us in this room have already heard about the Vision Zero initiatives that are being pursued not only in the state of Texas, but throughout the country. And part of that process is to actually do some performance measures, and we do it on 5 items. The total number of fatalities per 100 million VMTs, number of serious injuries, and then again, standardized for 100 million VMTs. And we also keep track of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And we do this annually. So let's go to the next one. And so for TxDOT, these are the numbers for the entire state of Texas, but we can see the numbers from 2019 to 2022. One of the things you would notice is that from 2019 to 2021, it went up, but in 2022, our total fatalities were down, and so were the rate of fatalities. And somewhat similar trend was visible for 2022 in number of serious injuries. Based on that, for the year 2023, TxDOT has set these targets at 3,159 for fatalities, 1.20 for standardized fatalities per 100 million VMTs, 17,819 total number of serious injuries, 6.77 standardized, and 2,340 fatalities and serious injuries for non-motorized vehicles. And when expressed as 5-year averages, that's what you see at the bottom. Based on that, we also look up the McLennan County, which is our planning area numbers, and we notice that our trends are in fact rather alarming. And what we're seeing is that from 40-35, 2021, it goes up to 38, and in 2022, in fact, went up to 42. And that's even when adjusted for 100 million VMTs, that number is 1.40. Which is which actually has been the highest in the last 4 or 5 years. And so our 2023 targets as we speak now is simply a projection of how TxDOT had estimated, because our expectation is to not only support how we can make McLennan County roadway safer, but also support the statewide target. And a part of that, what you see as 2023 target is based on the TxDOT numbers. So one of the questions we have for us is, so what does it really take us to get to zero fatality by 2050? And so this issue we know is becoming quite important. And in fact, in the last 2 years, we have taken more initiatives related to safety than we had in the past decade or so. And some of the examples that we have in front of you is that we need to set some regional vision, which we will do for the next part of our next MTP planning process, and also through strategic planning processes. And at the same time, we also need to very clearly reflect how safety is integrated into our project evaluation criteria for MTP itself. Modal choices, travel time, land use connections, all of these analyses or crash hotspots, they all need to inform how we select project and how we fund them. Plan and program the MTP and TIP that contribute to accomplishment of statewide targets. Now, this question has come up several times, that these targets sometimes look like we just set the targets and forget about them. We just do them at the beginning of each year in January, and after that we do nothing about it. But fortunately, what we are seeing, at least in the current climate, is that not only we have made some of the comprehensive safety action plan, hopefully we get funded for that, but at the MPO level, I have something else that I wanted to mention is that City and Farm.org, it's a 501c3 nonprofit that looks at human scale development throughout Texas in both rural and urban areas. They have received a fairly substantive support from TxDOT as well as Anchorage Foundation to talk about Safe Street for Texas program. And part of that discussion, so in April, we are expecting to host a workshop in which we can invite the city officials from throughout McLennan County for how can they accommodate in some of their day-to-day decision-making the safety concerns of the roadway. At the same time, we are also part of the TxDOT Safety Task Force, and MPO Safety Action Plan, Safety Plan is being proposed and being discussed about with the help of TTI, and in some cases, MPOs themselves are working to use about $50,000, which has been allocated from TxDOT to each MPO to develop their own plan. Next one. Some of the statewide efforts, so Texas Transportation Commission has made it a very high level priority, and the TxDOT Safety Task Force that was composed of all the TxDOT districts and divisions and 7 MPOs, and they came up with their plan to how to so not only related to the design aspect of the roadway itself, but also the messaging and EMS management as well. So the part of this is the funding investment, long-term plans. How do we change some of these? These are all being discussed and being implemented. We are at the early stages of development of these plans, but as this year progresses, you will begin to see a whole lot more action on this. Nationally, of course, the US DOT already has adopted National Roadway Safety Strategy. And in fact, at the last discussion of Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, we had presenters from Federal Higher Administration to discuss how comprehensively they look at safety. Several new rules and criteria for awarding federal grants based on safety are being discussed as we speak, and they're being incorporated in most of the infrastructure grant as well. And so these are some of the efforts that we are making. I'm expecting that these will start paying dividends probably 3-4 years down the road rather than immediately, because a lot of these projects and the plans that we takes a while to implement them. So the question for us today is that should all of these 3 performance targets that we have presented, we are asking you to give us the directive action so that we can start the public input process on these, and then we'll bring it up to you again at the next meeting for adoption.
Any questions of Mukesh on this one? Thank you, Serena, for the presentation there. And thanks, Dr. Kumar. Again, this is about beginning really what is the federally required public input process to go forward with these safety targets and condition targets. And we will not have this in the form of a resolution or motion. We put it in the form of a directive action. And so I'll just put this to a vote. All those in favor of having MPO staff begin the federally required public input process, say aye. Aye. All those not in favor say no. It was unanimous. We now move to item 9. Updated discussion regarding rebuilding American infrastructure with sustainability and equity. That's RAISE grant notice of funding opportunity.
So RAISE grant typically funds implementation projects, capital projects that are already well designed and engineered. However, in this round, they have decided to put at least $75 million for planning grants, which gives the MPO its ability to not only start thinking about the next MTP, but how can we do some of the preliminary work using RAISE grants so that we can get to the MTP in a meaningful way. So there is $1.5 billion total for the fiscal year 2023. And as a point of reference, all the municipalities who are here in Mecklenburg County, we want to be able to help them not only to write some of these grants, but also be able to apply for a particular kind of capital projects that they can come up with. What we plan to do at the MPO is that by February 28th, we would like to write a planning grant in which what we are considering, our initial thoughts are that we want to consider a smart network corridor, plan it, design and engineer it as part of this, this proposal, in which we could integrate economic development, housing, land use, zero emissions, safety, resilience, disaster planning. The point being that, that instead of, so you just heard us talk about the safety targets and such, but we want to be able to think about the smart network corridor, not just in terms of efficiency, but also in terms of how do we get these ideas and integrate them into a planning process itself. At the next meeting, I will have much more detail for you because at this point in time, we're still in the brainstorming session of exactly what needs to be the scope of this project. This is going to be due on 28th, and some of us are going to be working diligently before the next meeting. So we'll bring it to you next meeting again with more concrete ideas on what exactly are we going to be proposing as part of this.
Any questions for Dr. Kumar on the RAISE grant? Again, just sort of preliminary information at this point. We'll have more information at the next meeting.
Yes.
Right. Okay. There's no question.
I
Can I
noticed,
get your name? I need to-
May Wallace,
May.
Mobilize Waco. Thank you. I noticed housing was on that, so this isn't just about transit?
Well, the transportation and land use is identified as one of the important planning emphasis area in the current infrastructure bill. And so we want to start thinking about it, about how do we do this? So it's one thing most of us tend to say that yes, planning and land use, of course, they match each other. They need to match each other. They influence each other quite a bit, but there's not a very well-defined framework about how do we consider them. And so what we are proposing is that it is important for us to start considering them and coming up with some ideas about how to do it.
To bring those things together.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thanks, Ms. Walls. As you know, discussion on that item, anything else, Ms. Walls?
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item, 10, update and discussion on NEVI, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure.
The most important update I have is that currently alternative fuel corridor planning is underway. We are expecting by October that process will be completed and TxDOT would have allocated most of the money for alternative fuel corridor, which are typically most of the highways throughout the state of Texas and some of the rural parts on the west side of Texas, where it's not just the highway interstates, but also a few major important corridors that have been identified. For us, what is going to be important, and once that process is over, then county seats as well as MPOs are going to start rolling out a new set of plan, and new set of funding will be made available. Tentatively speaking, we are expecting a major announcement again in October. Meanwhile, at the MPO level, one of the things that, not just one of the things, several important things that we have started spending time considering is how do we incorporate ideas of equity efficiency into the discussion about charging stations, even the kinds of mode of transportation that we are going to be using that needs to be charged, so that it's not all single occupancy vehicle, but we can also start considering electric bikes and any other matters. And also freight is going to be a really important driver of this discussion. And so by October, what we plan to do is bring you up to speed so that we can start talking about, here are some of the thoughts that MPO has about how we might want to do that for McLennan County. And so by October, please do expect some major announcements, not only from TxDOT and FHWA, but also some outputs of what we have been discussing internally.
So any questions for Dr. Kumar on Noe? This is about charging stations, placement, strategy, and we have some time obviously before this funding is out there. So just keep it on the radar. Yeah. Okay, on to item number 11, update discussion from the technical advisory. We don't have one. Zane is not here today, so we'll speak that one. We will move to item 12, discussion and update from the Texas Department of Transportation regarding significant highway construction within the Waco metropolitan area. Clayton report.
Sir. All right, we'll start with the drive. The bulk of this work is primarily on the west end of the job right now. I'm completing flat work around Waco Creek with our culvert head walls. We anticipate most of that flat work to wrap up late this month, early part of February. We're working with Encore right now to get power drop set up for the switches to new signals. That should take place in February to start getting those no signals activated. At that point, we'll complete the remaining work there in the intersections. Looking probably at a March-ish timeframe for completion on that Waco Drive project right now. State Highway 31 overpasses. Again, bulk of the work continues to be on the new overpass bridge westbound, working on the 939 intersection below, along with the widening back to the south. This project is still on track for completion of this summer. Our Spring Valley widening, that's between Sun Valley and Hewitt Drive. Currently, the bulk of the work is kind of between the Sun Valley and Old Temple area. We move traffic over to temporary pavement on the west side of the roadway. That's allowed us to start some of the permanent drainage work, permanent pavement work on the east half of the roadway. That work will continue into late this year. We probably are looking at a February timeframe to make a similar traffic switch from Old Temple Road back to Hewitt Drive, putting traffic on temporary pavement on the west half of the roadway. Again, that'll allow us to complete the permanent drainage work and roadway work on the east half of the roadway. Still on track for that fall of 2024 completion. State Highway 6 mall to mall. So lots of changes on this project. Some of that happening today. We actually switched eastbound frontage road traffic right around the Beverly Bridge last night. So between Imperial and Bagby. We've had to do a little bit of adjustment to our detour pavement. As an interim measure, we've got the Bagby exit reopened. But that will close again tomorrow. Another switch that's coming up early part of February, we'll be moving westbound main lane traffic onto the newly constructed frontage road bridges in that same area at Beverly Drive. That'll allow us to start work on the main lane bridges over the railroad tracks there as well. And then in early February, our west to east U-turn closest to 84 will be moved to permanent pavement as well. And that'll let us complete the two frontage road bridges closest to 84. Currently still on track for a completion of end of this calendar year on the State Highway 6 job as well.
Hey, Clayton, on this one really quick, I got someone that texted earlier that said that if you're going eastbound on the sign saying you should take Imperial to exit for Baggy, but then when you do that, you're forced back on.
So that's, yeah, we have to.
I know y'all are working on that, but this might be a good group to explain that to, in case we're getting calls from doing something.
Sure, so the switch last night, we were moving or opening up the eastbound bridge over the railroad tracks. What that would do is actually close the Bagby exit headed eastbound as well.
Is eastbound to the lake? Or
No,
is
eastbound headed
to
towards
the-
35, headed towards 35. So if you wanted to get to Bagby with our traffic switch, you'd exit at Imperial, travel down the new frontage road, go over the new bridge and get to Bagby. We had an issue arise this morning with the temporary pavement there that for safety reasons, we had to shut down and get it corrected. That closed the frontage road at the entrance ramp closest to Richard Carr headed eastbound. So it would have forced you right back onto the main lanes of 6 where the Bagby exit is closed. So unfortunately, it created a long detour back to the Bagby area. As an interim step, we've actually got the Bagby exit reopened as an interim measure. So you can get to Bagby off the existing ramp for now. We anticipate getting our planned detour open later today. We're going to leave it in its current configuration with the detour open and the old ramp open, give it a day or two, and then close that exit ramp down at that point. So thanks. All right, I-354B. Move on to our pictures here. Here we are at the south end of the job, around 17. You can see the completed pavement coming together. There's a little bit of concrete median work to do in this intersection, but other than that, work's wrapping up. 11th and 12th Street. Again, this is an area where pavement's complete, striping is complete. We've got our encore work complete and are currently scheduled to get those signals up and running mid next week, which will allow us to look at opening up that intersection as well, along with those signals. So mid next week, you should see traffic running east and west through 11th and 12th Street. Just another shot of the intersection again, showing the completed pavement. Moving up to 5th Street, this is really the bulk of the remaining pavement work. Since this photo was taken, we've gotten our asphalt bond breaker placed. We're currently scheduled to place the remaining concrete section actually Monday morning. Late this month, you should see the rest of that roadway opened as well.
When you say the concrete section, is that 5th coming to I-35?
Correct.
Because that's just single lane, right?
Correct, where this steps in around the CVS, from there all the way back to 35 in this area. You can see these are inlets, so that'll be your new curb line. So there will be another lane paved through that area. Today, we actually got the signals activated in this intersection as well. They're on flash as of today. We'd like to run that for roughly 48 hours or so, and then I'll have signals up and running there. So.
And then, but the road there that you just pointed to will be done by the end of this month.
That's what we're looking for right now. Like I said, it'll be paved Monday. We've got a little bit of some leave out pours to do around the inlets to get those throats done. And then we can do some of the sidewalk work behind curb at that point. So.
Where is the inlet for the parking lot?
So I know it's tough to tell, but here's an inlet here. These are junction boxes draining to 2 inlets right here. So it's capturing drainage from offsite and bringing it into the system down here. Same intersection again, just showing the 4th Street area. Looking at the east half of the intersection, again, you see the completed pavement, sidewalk work. Yeah, I think that's a duplicate photo there, so you can skip it. University Parks, again, just on the completed pavement in this area. The east half of the intersection. Shot looking north, we're wrapping up some of the retaining wall still with the Brazos with the sidewalk work coming right behind it. So that work should wrap up sometime in February at this area. Again, just another shot around U Parks. Here's a shot looking north to MLK. Again, the bulk of this work is complete. You can see some of the retaining wall work I referenced at the bottom of the picture there being wrapped up. Just a shot of the completed main lanes from MLK looking north. Another shot of the river looking back south. This is headed up north towards 4th Street. And from 4th Street looking south, again, you can see the completed main lanes. Business 77, again, an intersection that's totally different from when we started. The signals are actually activated in flash in this intersection as well, so we'll have permanent signals up and running this week there. West half of the intersection, some of the minor side street work has been completed since this photo was taken, so this area is wrapping up. From Business 77 looking up north, again, completed pavement coming together with some cleanup and flat work ongoing. Looking back to the south from that same intersection. Here's overhead at 84, showing the west half of the intersection and some of the changes there. To the east towards the Sam's Club and HEB. Again, the bulk of the work in this intersection is completed as well. Looking back to the south, again, this is the exit to Business 77 and the braided on-ramp. And then looking to the north end of the project around the Barron Circle area, I see completed pavement here. This is up at the north end of the job as well, looking back to the south. This is all the way up at the 340 intersection. We're getting some minor island work completed, permanent striping in, and that area is coming together as well. North end of the job, looking back south. And then looking north off the project limits. Yeah, any questions?
The northbound on-ramp at 340. Are y'all planning on?
So we've actually got another project that's gonna let in April to actually resurface from the north project limits all the way up to the Business 77 area. You're talking about the pavement repair? Yes,
Right.
we'll look and see if anything interim needs to be done before then, but a permanent pavement repair project will be coming this summer.
From about the on-ramp all the way onto the interstate is.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. Like I said, that surface will be completely replaced with the project that's coming this summer.
Okay. All right, well, good.
Yeah, we'll mill off the old surface and put down a new one all the way up to Business 77.
And then north side or east side of the river, pedestrian path under the bridge, when is that gonna be open?
That's, as the retaining wall work wraps up, should be later this month. We'll come back and get the sidewalk work completed, so I would anticipate that sometime in February, being fully restored there. At the river.
River one, east side.
Great report, Clayton. Any other questions of Clayton? Always love this report, Clayton. It's great progress and great improvement. And also the realization it's not just the city of Waco that has every street closed.
Appreciate it.
Every construction zone. It's not just us guys. It's the whole county. I know, I guess when this is all done on I-35, Clayton, we're not gonna see those drone shots anymore, but maybe we could look at one last time of a before and after on what that.
I was gonna actually put together some before photos, final, and then once we get everything done, we actually fly the project. I'll bring the video showing.
Super, fantastic. The other thing I was thinking about, if we could get the drone shots on the mall-to-mall project. Because I know it's so helpful just to see it, it brings it to life and you can ask questions and usually see it. I know there's not as many.
We got
soft ramps and everything.
different contractual things, but I'll see what we do to get some updates.
Super. Thanks, Clayton. On to item 10, work group updates. Do we have any updates from any work groups? Do we know have any other work groups here on that?
The most important thing is for the bike pedestrian, we have our next meeting on February 15th, and John Haberman and his group from TTI will be doing a presentation about the bicycle and pedestrian improvements under the I-35 project. How did that come about? And so that's going to be useful because we can start also thinking about how to incorporate some of these in other larger construction projects as well. We do plan to convene the connected automated vehicle work group for April 19th. I wanted to put it on your radar, and if there is anyone that you would like to recommend for that work group, please do forward me their address so that we can contact them.
The next item is the MPO monthly report.
So our travel demand model for 2050 is progressing on schedule. So by March, we should have it completed. One quick item that I wanted to put on your radar is that in the background, we have started working on our MTP 2050, which will be due in 2025 January. So we're going to take 2 years to work this through. We'll spend quite a bit of time because this time not only we have lots of new planning emphasis area that need to be incorporated into it, but also we have started trying to define how do we want to handle 2050. And so at the beginning, we are having a lot of internal discussion, but at the June meeting that will be on your agenda, we'll ask you to create a steering committee for the next MTP, and then the group that is working and doing a lot of brainstorming today, they will hand off their work to the working committee, and then you will get a monthly update on how we are progressing, so any changes that we are making to the next MTP. So that's going to be quite important. I do have one announcement that a lot of you probably have already heard, that we have been talking about transportation management area for at least for the last 3-4 years. Our numbers came out at 192,844, so we were short by just over 7,000 people. And this is from the Federal Register, so this is the only number I have. The one additional number I have is that according to the current 2020 census, our contiguous urban area actually declined by 0.5 square mile, which is not a very large number, but it actually shrunk our overall footprint rather than expanding. Even though we have more population, but according to the current criteria, it shrunk. I don't have the maps right now because the census has not released those maps yet. They also do not have a timeline on exactly when will the maps become available, but I am expecting those maps to become available sometime in March or so. The moment I have more information, I would like to give a more detailed presentation on what is which so that we can start thinking about. So for instance, we know, so City of McGregor is listed as a separate urban area according to 2020 census. And so it is not included in our urbanized area for that in that sense. And so once I have the map, then we can have a more detailed discussion on it. But I did want to update you that at least for the time being, the way these numbers suggest, it'll be another 10 years before we become TMA. The transportation alternative preliminary application, this is just a reminder that I am aware that at least we have at least 3 or 4 municipalities that are preparing the TA proposals. The preliminary applications are due on January 27th, and whatever help we can provide, we are happy to do that. And I should also mention that Amy has been very generously has offered her help with reviewing a lot of applications locally for any municipalities. And so we are quite grateful for that. So 27th is the deadline. Thank you.
That is the monthly report. Move to item 10, announcements. I'll say that the next MPO policy board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 16th, 2023 at 2 o'clock. Anything else we need to announce? Yes. Like a quick announcement on, first of all, Commissioner Miller, I don't know if you officially recognized you. I said you were sitting in for Scott, but Commissioner Pat Miller right here. The other thing I want to bring up is that Keith Bond, introduced Calvin Hody, or Calvin Hody, I'm sorry. Keith Bond, City Manager in Lacey Lakeview. I think we'll make an announcement to him.
Yeah, so Mr. Hottie came on Tuesday, was his first day. He is my replacement as city manager at Lacey Lakeview. I have roughly 15 working days left before I'm gone.
How many hours?
So Calvin and I will be working together for the next roughly 3 weeks. Just talking about projects that are ongoing and getting up to speed. You know, a lot of them know Calvin. Calvin was our mayor for 16 years. He was on our city council for 20 total. And so I'm lucky enough to know him and be able to work with him. And happy they chose him.
And Calvin will be joining this group.
He will be taking my place, yes.
Unless he wants to just continue to come.
I will look forward to that.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any agenda item they'd like considered for a future meeting? Do not have anything. Okay, the last item for today is the hearing of visitors. This time we provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO policy board on any item of MPO business not identified on this agenda, and we'll open the hearing of visitors. MPO staff revenue registration cards for items not on the. There are none, so we'll close the hearing of visitors, and item 14 is the adjournment. And we'll adjourn this meeting at 3:08.